Welcome to The Inside Story. I'm Billy Hollowell, and I'm joined today by the Christian Post's John Brown. How you doing today, John?
I'm good, Billy. Thanks.
So we have a story today that is a little complicated. There are a lot of layers to it, and we're going to have you break it down. But this rather strange story surrounds the stated clerk of the second largest Presbyterian denomination in America. And I'm going to let you tell us what has gone on, because it's a chaotic scenario and a lot of voices are involved in it. So what happened with the stated clerk?
Well, Dr. Bryan Chapell, he's been the stated clerk of the PCA since 2020. He was elected in 2021, but he served pro tempore before. He was on the Gospel Coalition's podcast last week, and he was talking to the host. They had a very long conversation, but he was touching on the topic of stewarding institutions. And he just happened to hold up a sticky note with a list of names on it, and he said, these are the folks who are scandalizers. He said they invest hours every day attacking others for their supposed lack of faithfulness, and then he claimed that every single one of them had either left their family, left the faith, or taken their life. And I guess he thought no one would be able to see the names, but people paused the video and zoomed in, and it just went viral on social media. And what's crazy is that some of the names on this list are ministers in good standing with either the PCA or some similar denomination. And so people were very upset about it. And he issued an apology, and the Gospel Coalition pulled the podcast, but the damage was already done.
So, okay, before we continue, so there are a lot of people who probably don't know this. What is the role of the stated clerk when it comes to the denomination?
Well, basically, it's their chief administrator. It's not like they don't have the sort of popes that other denominations or the Catholic Church would. But, they basically keep things organized, and they manage the General Assembly, which is their big annual meeting every year. They basically represent the denomination publicly. And but as I said, it's mostly supposed to be an administrative role, and the stated clerk really shouldn't be weighing in publicly on controversial issues inside the church.
Yeah, so to have a list of names, you already said this, but I want to sort of reiterate it. Why were the people on this list considered scandalizers, and were all of the names really fitting of that category?
Well, no, I mean, that's a good question. I think it confused some of the people who are even on the list. I mean, Carl Trueman, who's a best-selling author, and he's a minister in the Orthodox Presbyterian Church, he told World Magazine he had no idea why he was on it. And he defended himself. He said, my work does not attack Christians. And there was another pastor, Andy Webb. He speculated it was over an issue he had with Dr. Chapell more than 20 years ago. I mean, there were some people on the list who took some controversial stances on things, but what's interesting is as I was looking into seeing what each person could have possibly done to earn their spot, I just realized how absurd that is. And that's why publicizing something like that is wrong, because you start dredging up everyone's sins from the past.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's interesting because it puts people immediately, whether these things are true or not, right, in a position of having to defend themselves. And if you're showing up on a list like that, and people are zooming in, because that's what happened, right? They're zooming in, they're seeing the names on this list. Chapel reportedly thought that it wasn't the names weren't viewable, I guess, or discernible, but they were, because people were able to zoom in. You're then in a position of having to defend yourself, and that's really awkward for everybody. And that kind of brings me to, why do you think there was such a big reaction to this moment, not just among the people on the list, but in the faith space outside of that?
Well, I just think it was shocking for such a high-profile leader to flash what a lot of people were calling an enemies list. That's what it seemed to be to many people. And that just really doesn't contribute to Christian unity. And one of the names was a pastor who died in 1993 in an accident. So I don't understand why he would have a list of people going back that far within arm's length at all times. And his claims were very serious and accusing people of very major moral or spiritual failures.
Yeah. Well, okay. So what is the update on Chapel now? Because obviously, and you talked a little bit about this before, but this story broke. It was a big deal. He's issued apologies. Where is he now? Give us the background on that.
Well, there were multiple ministers who requested formal ethics investigation into him for Ninth Commandment violations, prohibiting bearing false witness against one's neighbor. And so it went on for a few days, and then the Christian Post wrote it up, and it ended up on the Drudge Report. And within hours, uh, Dr. Chapel announced that he would be retiring shortly. And so I'm not sure what he's going to do now going forward, and I'm not entirely sure if the ethics probe is going to happen, but it'll be interesting to see.
So, you cover a lot of different types of stories in culture and faith and politics. Why do you think a story like this matters?
A couple reasons. I think in terms of conservative Presbyterians, the PCA is now sort of on the front lines spiritually, because the PCUSA, the largest denomination, they've gotten pretty liberal. They're losing lots of members, but the PCA is actually growing, and so I think there's obviously a hunger for biblical teaching, especially among young people, and so they really need to have some strong godly leadership heading into the future. And I think for the broader church, it's just a reminder that we need to focus on grace and truth over grudges, and especially when public trust is at stake.
Yeah. No, and I think these things matter, understanding what is going on inside of denominations. And in this case, you also have a lot of names of people, again, that are being brought up into this. And so it becomes a much bigger dynamic. John, appreciate you joining us today to break it all down.
Thank you, Billy.
Everyone else, make sure you head on over to the Christian Post and tune in next week for another episode of The Inside Story. We'll see you then.